Welcome participants in this new session, and as we know, in the last session we were talking about organizational culture, its meaning, definition, and yes, its various factors and how it can be developed in an organization. And in this session we will talk about the importance of organizational culture and other concepts which are related or which are being practiced among organizations, specifically in the domain of organizational behavior. So, why organizational culture is important? In the last session we were talking that if we want to attain the organizational goal, then of course there is need to practice a typical type of knowledge, capabilities, abilities, and yes, there is need to practice certain values, and these values and all these things should be practiced through various norms, traditions, rules, regulations, and yes, the behavior of people. The sum total of that will become the organizational culture. And why it is important? Because there are certain cultures which supports the organization to easily attain its goal and to easily enhance the productivity, effectiveness and efficiency. And contrary to that, there are a typical type of organizational cultures which can hamper or stop organization as well as its people or employees to attain the organizational goal or to enhance the productivity, effectiveness and efficiency. So, establishment, sustaining and running of a typical type of organizational culture for the attainment of organizational goal is mandatory and necessary, and this is the significance. And in this significance, the very first thing which can reflect the organizational culture is it starts with its vision. With what vision an organization has been established, and for the achievement of what kind of goals and objective organization has been constituted or established or formed, that will decide the organizational culture. And after creation or after formation of the organization, now what kind of values will be practiced, whether the constructive positive values or compromise with them, or the negative and the values which can harm the organization or other element of environment of the organization. So, values also plays a significant role in the organizational culture, and the organizational culture is important with respect to the employees' engagement also. What type of rule, regulation, values and style of working and the work designing is there, that will help to engage the employees. So, employee engagement can be maximized and minimized as a result of the organizational culture. So, the organizational culture plays a significant role in employees' engagement, and yes, employees' happiness is also outcome of organizational culture. We can see certain organizations which are completely inert towards its environment, which are completely indifferent and inert towards the employees and people working with it, but other organizations which are very much concerned, caring and well understanding the well-being of employees working with it, and as a result of that it will bring happiness to the people. So, organizational culture helps to create a happy environment in the organization. And next is, yes, of course, the organizational culture helps to improve the productivity, effectiveness and efficiency of organization. There are certain traditions, there are certain rituals, there are certain ways of doing things, there are certain behaviors, and there are certain set of activities which hampers the organization to attain its productivity and goals. So, a typical organizational culture supports the organization to attain the goal, and if it will deviate from that organizational culture, then it will create a problem for the organization to attain the goal. And yes, next significant factor for which organizational culture should be strengthened and practiced is retention rate. If the culture in the organization is not appropriate, it is not mapping and matching with the need, demand, aspirations, and yes, their happiness, their well-being, then that organizational culture is not appropriate for the employees, and employee will not stay with the organization. So, this organizational culture is a significant element in maintaining the retentivity in the organization. And another factor which is greatly impacted by the organizational culture is recruitment and selection, or hiring people within the organization. If organizational culture is very good, then people will never try to leave the organization, as well as they will become the spokesperson of the organization, and being spokesperson, they will talk positive and loyal about the organization, and that will attract the future recruitment and selections for the organization. So, these are some of the factors because of which practice of organizational culture is very important and significant. Now, we will talk a bit about what is difference between corporate culture and the organizational culture. So, organizational culture already I have explained. Now, to just understand the difference between these two, I will explain the corporate culture. Corporate culture is more deep rooted in the organizational goals, strategies, structure and approaches. So, organizational culture is basically it is related to it emphasizes in operating and functioning of the organization, whereas corporate culture is concerned about goals, strategies, structure and approaches to the labor and customers, and yes, of course, to the investors also. So, what kind of emphasis is given to the goals, strategies, that is concerned with the corporate culture, whereas in the case of organizational culture, emphasis is put up on the operating and functioning of the organization. So, this is basic difference between organizational culture and corporate culture. Now, the various factors which can constitute the organizational culture, and among them the very first is nature of organization. For what purpose, for what operations, for what function the business has been created. That is very first element which will constitute the organizational culture. Next one is individual working with the organization. What type of people are working with organization, and this can be understood that what type of people are being brought to the organization, that will help in developing a supportive organizational culture for the attainment of organizational goal. So, what type of people are working with the organization, and what attitude, mentalities, interests, perceptions, even thought processes people are having, because the attitude, mentalities, interests and perceptions will result into the behavior, and that behavior, sum total of all those behaviors will reflect in the form of organizational culture. So, that will also contribute to the constitution of the organizational culture. Then next is what type of goals and objectives are set, and yes, of course, the degree of hardship involved in that, that will also help in development of organizational. If the goals and objectives given to the people of organization are realistic and feasible, then it means the organizational culture will be conducive to the attainment of organizational goal. If goals and objectives given to the organizational people are not realistic and feasible, then it will create conflict, it will create hardships, and as a result of that, it would be difficult for the organization to attain the goals. And the next one is strategies and procedures designed. Yes, if we go to different production or service creation organizations, how the standard operating procedures or processes have been developed, whether these processes and procedures are employee friendly or creating trouble for the employees. What type of strategies related to the finance, strategies related to the production, strategies related to the human resource management, and strategies related to the marketing. What kind of strategies and procedures are used? If the strategies and procedures are simplified and are very easy to practice and observe and accomplish, then the organizational culture will become conducive and appropriate. Now, what is role of human resource practices to ensure success of organizational culture? And human resource practices means there are different functions required to be accomplished by the human resource management, and these functions are, let us start from the beginning. Human resource planning, then job analysis, then recruitment and selection, then compensation, then induction and placement, then production, control and monitoring, then employees well-being. These are training and development. These are some of the major functions or activities of human resource management, and all these major activities are accomplished and executed by practicing certain HR practices. So, how those practices will help the organization to attain success by utilizing its organizational culture. So, among them, how rationally the human resource need have been analyzed, and after analysis of human resource need, then next how the job has been analyzed. When we were talking about organizational culture, we were talking about the strategies, the procedures, the operational procedures. If the operational procedures are very easy and adaptive to the employees working in the organization, the organizational culture will become conducive to employees for attainment of organizational goal. So, how human resource planning has been made, and then how jobs have been analyzed, and after job analysis, that is after completion or preparation of the job description and job specification, job design and job evaluation. If all these practices are appropriate for the organization, then of course, it will help to bring new employees in a better way, that is by recruiting and selecting. Human resource planning and need is assessed appropriately, job analysis is appropriate, resultantly the recruited and selected people are appropriate for the organization, and they are well mapped and matched with the culture of organization, because during the process of culture it is not only testing of how individual will perform in the organization, rather whether individual will be supportive to address the organizational culture or observe the organizational culture, only then it is appropriate. So, after selection, then what type of training and development? Nowadays, organizations have become the learning organizations. Reason being, present day is the day of advancement and change, and if there is frequent change and advancement, then there will be need of training and development. And it is not possible for organizations to shift employees regularly, frequently to other places for training and development. So, the organizations itself have started having their academic systems or training and development systems, and resultantly the organizations have become learning organizations. And what kind of training and learning being imparted, that training and learning will contribute in the development of organizational culture. So, not only that, then how people have been compensated and how the well-being of employees have been taken care, what kind of practices are being used for that purpose. All these things will also have impact on the organizational culture. Now, the next factor or next concept we must understand, what are various threats which can badly impact or which can have negative impact on the organizational culture, and among them the major threat is the negative attitude and ego of the people. If people working in the organization have negative attitude, counterproductive work behavior, deviant work behavior, non-cooperative behavior, non-coordinating behavior and non-collaborative behavior, that will really, and if they do not have tendency to learn, and if they do not have attitude to put effort to do the organizational work, all these factors are a kind of threat to the organizational culture. And if these threats of control on the inappropriate knowledge, control on inappropriate experiences, control on the inappropriate traditions, rituals, control on the counterproductive work behavior, if that would not be practiced, the organizational culture will become deteriorated and it will badly impact the organization in attaining its organizational goal. So, these threats must be checked. Now, there are different dimensions which can exhibit what kind of organizational culture is, and these dimensions are mechanistic and organic culture. Mechanistic culture is the bureaucratic kind of model. When an organization is observing the bureaucratic kind of culture in the organization, that would be mechanistic. Mechanistic means the organization is working by adopting and observing a well developed mechanism. There is lesser possibility of flexibility and deviation from the set system, set SOPs and set procedures. Whatever modes of accomplishment of organizational work have been established, people will follow that only. Organic means it is opposite to that. Here strict rules, strict procedures, strict systems are not existing. Rather, people are given freedom to decide about their goal, they decide about their processes and procedures in innovative and creative way, so that they can do their work in a different way, and finally, they can attain the goal and they can enhance the productivity and effectiveness of the organization. Next dimension is authoritarian and participative culture. We will find certain organizations where the boss or the top level management or administration will issue the order, command and instructions, and people are bound to follow that only. It is a kind of authoritarian culture in the organization, whereas among other organizations, employees, team members, people in the department are given freedom to participate in deciding the processes, in deciding the functions, in deciding the decisions of organization. That kind of organization will have the participative kind of culture. It will depend upon the type, nature and size of organization, which will decide whether the authoritarian or participative kind of culture can be practiced. The situation and circumstances under which organization is working will also decide whether the authoritarian or participative culture should be practiced. Then next is subculture and dominant culture. We can see certain organizations where the size of organization is very large, and because of that there are number of plants or number of geographical places at which company is working. So, every plant or every sub unit of organization is having its subculture, whereas other one is the dominating culture. A typical culture is developed deliberately and effortfully. Organization is trying to execute effortfully, organization is trying to implement that organizational culture. That kind of culture is the dominant organizational culture. Another type of culture is strong and weak culture. Some of the organization do not pay much attention for the development of the culture, and others which are very particular about a typical kind of culture. Reason being that typical kind of culture will support the organization to attain its goal, and as a result of that, some of the organizations are observing a strong culture. People are deliberately bound to observe the kind of culture developed for the organization, whereas in the weak culture there is freedom for the organization. And the example of that, some of the organization include uniform for and particular lunch hours, particular communication styles, how people will interact, what kind of interpersonal relationships will be there. All these factors are strictly implemented, and there is deliberate control and check on that. So, that kind of culture is a strong culture, whereas there is freedom. People can wear any kind of dresses, there is no uniform, and people can practice any kind of traditions while working, and there is freedom for interpersonal relationship they want to, and there is freedom how they want to communicate with their seniors, with their juniors, and at horizontal level. So, that kind of culture is a weak kind of culture. Now, we will talk about another type, that is national culture versus organizational culture. Now, the national culture is, there are certain organizations which are typically observing the nationality, and we can take example of the different defense organizations. The very first there should be the streak of nationalism while working with the organization, and it is not only with the defense organizations only. There are certain other organizations also which are very particular about the national culture, and that culture reflects, and things will become different. If a company is multinational company and working in the home country only, then it is very easy to observe the national culture. When company has expanded to the international level or working multinationally, then in that case, if organization is observing the national culture, a company from India is doing business in America, and even then the factor of Indian nationalism are being practiced. One part. Second part, a company from India working in America, and the freedom is given to its employees, because in America maximum of the employees of Indian company will be from America. So, if they are given freedom to observe their nationalism, or that nationalism is inculcated in the organizational culture of organization, that is kind of national culture. Organizational culture means whatever a particular organization created in a particular country, and whatever culture is developed, then that culture will propagate everywhere throughout all the nations. Now, lastly, we will talk about the process of development of organizational culture, and for that the very first step in it is establish values. And how values can be established? There is need to study, to examine, to understand what organization is, number one, for what this organization has been created, number two, number three, how organization can attain those goals, and all these three things will come under the preview of vision and mission. So, in simple, what is vision and mission of the organization, and how this vision can be actualized, and how this mission can be executed. So, the goals and objectives of organization can be attained. Attainment of those goals and objectives is possible with the help of various resources, strategies, functions, and functions, both the journal functions and operational functions. Not only that, there would be need of a typical organizational culture, and that organizational culture would be inbuilt with the organizational values. So, to attain the goal and objectives of organization, how and what kind of values can be created, that is very first step. And the next step is, with the help of those values and the decided phenomena, the vision of organization should be created. And once the vision is available and organization understand what kind of values to be practiced, then these values needs to be inculcated among different functions, operations, procedures and practices. And as a result of inculcation of all these, gradually the organizational culture will start taking shape. And lastly, these values should be made permanent part of the social system of the organization. In the beginning, I told you that an organization is a social entity. So, the culture can be built by socializing the people with certain set of values, and with this the culture of organization can be established, and then it should be sustained. So, here we will close this session. Thank you for your participation, and I think you might have enjoyed the learning. In the next session, we will come with a new topic. So, thank you very much. Thank you.